How could I have been together with a thin-haired woman like you for 35 years? All my retirement money is mine. You, with your thin hair, are neither my wife nor a woman. My husband, who's been with me for 35 years, scoffs at my thinning hair. Why did my husband suddenly start to ridicule my thinning hair when he reached retirement age? I know all the reasons why. Okay, I got it. Here you are, the divorce papers. I don't think my husband expected me to sign the papers as he wished. He was wide-eyed, open-mouthed, and speechless. My name is Daisy, 67 years old. From the time I was in my 20s until I retired, I worked as a nurse at a general hospital. I retired at the age of 65, and it's been 2 years since I retired. Now I work part-time at a nursing home. My husband Donald is 64 years old, 3 years younger than me. He is on his way to work today, just before his retirement. Donald and I got married 35 years ago. I was 32 at the time. I was working in a hospital, mainly for the night staff. Then my father, who was the manager of the medical equipment manufacturer, came to me. Daisy, why don't you think about getting married? You shouldn't only be passionate about your work, but you should also find happiness as a woman. He arranged me to meet Donald. My father's company dealt with medical devices such as thermometers, blood pressure cuffs, and cardiac pacemakers. When my father became elderly, my brother took over my father's company. The company's management and sales are still going strong. When my father was in charge, Donald was the son of the managing director. Donald was neither handsome nor tall, nor does he have any outstanding skills. My first impression of him was that he was a serious gentleman. At the time, I was on a blind date and thought this man was going to be my husband, but it didn't really feel like it. Why did Donald seem to be so serious on the blind date? The reason is, it's not an exaggeration to say that it was an arranged marriage because of our parents' circumstances. This is what I was told after the blind date. But his father was like my father's lackey the whole time he was on the job. Please, let my son be a potential husband of your daughter, and please, arrange a blind date. They're so close in age. I think the two of them will get along very well. My father-in-law heard a rumor that my father was looking for a future husband for me. I heard that he suggested to my father that I have a blind date with Donald. My father was not surprised and readily agreed. At the blind date, I just greeted like, "Nice to meet you, I'm Daisy." I only remember that I gave a minimal greeting. The fathers of both families proceeded to talk to each other, and Donald asked me at the end of the blind date, "I would like very much to see you again." I vividly remember that. But now, 35 years after marrying, I've almost forgotten about the rest of our relationship. My father used to ask me, "How are things going with you and Donald these days?" And my mother asked me, "Why don't you wear that on your next date? It would be fashionable, wouldn't it?" She bought me a lot of new clothes. I can still vaguely remember that. My parents arranged my relationship and marriage with Donald, but after the marriage, many hardships followed. As soon as we were married, my husband, who was in the best of spirits, said, "I am deeply grateful to Jasper and Eva for giving me this opportunity to meet Daisy." And then he continued, "As my father said, I would like to live with you both after our marriage. I would like to repay the two of you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to meet Daisy." And then he simply decided to move in at my parents' house. "What? Are you sure?" I was surprised, but my husband said, "I'm indebted to both of them." He smiled and said, "It's only natural." I wondered if he feels that my marriage is just a tool for his connection. I couldn't believe how easily he accepted to live with my parents. We started our honeymoon with a slight sense of bewilderment. My husband went to work as a regular employee of my father's company. After work, he comes home to my parents' house with my father, but that kind of life didn't last long. "Jasper complained that I don't do my work well." I'm just doing business as usual. Since Donald married Daisy, I'm getting an extreme increase in customer complaints. I've heard wrong dates for business meetings and miswritten documents. And there was one time he didn't pass on a call from a non-client to the employee in charge. I can't help but think that you're on a roll now that you're married to Daisy. At home, my husband and father each complained about each other. But between them, my mother and I are just baffled. After a few months of this, my husband quarreled with my father and resigned from his company. I'm sick and tired of seeing your father's face at home and at work. From now on, I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad. Not work, just take care of the house. Sorry, but don't just make an important decision without consulting me. Besides, if you and your father don't get along, you don't have to live with him. My husband's sudden resignation made me flinch. Then he continues. I'm sure you'll be fine with me being a stay-at-home dad. I'm tired of working and being at home with your stubborn father. I'm really mentally tired now. My husband found a cheap apartment to rent, and right after that we started living together. If this was going to happen, I wish he never announced that he was going to live with my parents in the first place. I murmured my dissatisfaction with him in my mind, but I never actually said anything to him. A few years later, our daughter was born, and he started looking for a job. But each time he found a new job, he would quit. Then he found another one, and then another one. Eventually, he started working part-time as a security guard and a janitor. I tried my best to balance the night shifts and work in raising our child. Then, when I was 40, my mother died of lung cancer. And when I was 55 years old, my father suffered a stroke and passed away. My daughter was just 20 years old when I saw them both off to heaven. After raising children and taking care of my parents, I wanted to devote myself to my work and hobbies. That's what I wanted. But life doesn't always work out the way you want it to. My husband, who had been working part-time jobs for the past few years, he was hired as a full-time employee by a security company, which was one of his part-time jobs. Of course, that itself is a happy occasion. But in reality, it was not a cause for celebration. It was a sighing situation. As soon as my husband started working full-time, he started spending money wildly. New cars, golf clubs, fishing equipment, and other expensive hobbies. What is this new car? You have a license, but you don't drive, right? I was astonished. My husband said to me as if he was looking down on me, I'm the head of the house. I work hard every day as a full-time employee. What I buy with my own money is my business. With these words, I understood everything that was going on with him. My parents are dead, our child is a grown-up, and my husband finally got a full-time job. He thinks now he is free to spend money on expensive hobbies. Maybe I put up with him and a lot of burdens without realizing it. When we got married, he asked to live with my parents, but just because he wanted to be a nice husband. Both during work and during his private life, he's being forced to be with my father, whom he didn't get along with. He was mentally exhausted and could not get a regular job for many years. When I think about it, I can't say anything back to my husband. But he took advantage of the fact that I didn't say anything back to him. My husband took it even farther. Your hair is getting thinner these days, isn't it? I've been thinking for a while. Why don't you buy some of those hair growth pills? If you don't, you'll be mistaken for an old man on the streets or at work. My husband started making fun of my thinning hair. I'm not concerned about it myself. Leave me alone. When I'd say that back to him, he'd say, You just don't leave it like that. It's why it's getting worse. You're a woman. You should take better care of yourself. Buy some hair growth pills or go see a doctor. I don't like it when you lax or even one of your flaws like that. That's when my husband's long talk begins. I started noticing thinning hair in my mid-30s. And by the time I was in my 50s, it had becoming quite noticeable. But my husband had never complained about my thinning hair. Rather, it's more like my husband didn't even come home as much. We moved out of my parents' house, and we started living in a rented apartment. Sometimes my parents would come to visit us because they were worried about me. My husband felt awkward, so he took a night job as a security guard, and during the day he would take naps at an internet cafe and never come home. After my parents passed away, he got a full-time job at a security company and started coming home early. And every time he saw me, he started complaining about my thinning hair. This situation continues to this day. He married me through an arranged marriage, and my father and he didn't even get along. And because of that, he had to resign from his job. After that, he couldn't find a job and would constantly work part-time. When he sees my face, I think he gets irritated because he remembers his bad past. Just as I was thinking about that my husband started making fun of my thinning hair, I found out the real reason through my daughter. Mom, I saw Dad walking with a woman happily on the streets. My husband was having an affair with a woman. I asked a credit agency to investigate it. The result was as I expected. I had all the evidence I needed to prove that my husband was cheating on me. But the most unforgivable thing was the fact that my daughter witnessed my husband's affair. No matter how bad our marriage life was, he shouldn't allow his child to see him cheating. My mind was made up. Divorce was the only option. Then the question was, when should I ask my husband for divorce? When it comes down to it, I didn't know when to tell him or how to start the conversation. Then I thought to myself, today is going to be the day I ask my husband for a divorce. On the day I made up my mind to do so, to my surprise, my husband divorced me first.
How could I have been 35 years together with a thin-haired woman like you? All my retirement money is mine. You with your thinning hair are neither my wife nor a woman. Now that I'm retired, I hope to spend the rest of my life without seeing your disgusting head.
As usual, my husband scoffed at my thinning hair. He put out the divorce papers on the table. It was the day after his retirement, but I didn't count on his retirement money. He worked for the security company for about 10 years from his 50s until now. He will probably receive about $1 million at most in retirement benefits. I don't need this. I shoved back the divorce papers that my husband had presented me.
What? It's pointless to come back at me now, okay? I've already made up my mind.
Yes, I've made up my mind too. Here are the divorce papers. In exchange for the blank divorce papers my husband had given me, I handed the completed ones I'd already prepared. I don't think he expected me to hand him the completed divorce papers. His eyes widened, his mouth dropped open, and he was speechless.
Hey, are you trying to say that your husband has no good use to you now that he's retired? You've come up with big, now that I'm getting retirement payout.
My husband complained about it like it sounded like he had hardly tried to speak. I can't help but just let out a sigh. How much do you think you'll get in severance pay? You've been a full-time employee for that security company for about 10 years. It's about $1 million anyway, right?
You're just trying to get me to leave you because my severance pay is so low. You only saw me as a man who brings in money, didn't you?
In front of the red-faced, angry husband, I held out a single brown envelope. I decided to divorce you because every time I saw you at home, you would make fun of my thinning hair. And because of what I found in this envelope.
What?
He froze for a moment. The next moment, he snatches the envelope from my hand. He looked at the photos in the envelope and hastily hid them behind his back.
This is, just for fun.
My husband shouted out loud and then suddenly said,
You could have been mistaken for an old man with thinning hair. I get depressed when I'm with you because you don't even try to take care of yourself. My life is so boring. I'd like to have a taste of the surreal for once in a while.
My husband wants to blame me for cheating on me. I can't admit that. If you don't like me, you can leave me. I can't forgive that our daughter witnessed your cheating scene. How can you flirt with a woman who you cheated on your wife with in broad daylight at a public place?
Our daughter would have a boyfriend too. She doesn't care about such trivial things like this.
My husband showed no signs of remorse.
Well, let's talk about it through a lawyer.
Then I left the house. Later, I received a phone call from my ex-husband, who Must have seen the alimony notice he received from my lawyer.
I miss you when I'm home alone. I'm sorry. Let's remarry.
I'm speechless with dismay at my ex-husband asking me to remarry him as soon as he calls me. Oh, why don't you remarry her?
No, I mean, she said she was just playing with me. She told me not to pester her because I broke up with you. She even called me a stalker. You're all I've got.
No, you don't have anything to say. I'm gonna hang up on you. I'll even block your calls. I told him that and he got all flustered.
Wait a minute. Listen, why don't we go shopping together? We can go to a cafe or a restaurant or something?
Oh, you're buying me a drink? I ask. That is, he stopped talking.
You're probably full of money from your hefty alimony payment to me.
You don't have any money, do you? My ex-husband suddenly became very angry and raised his voice.
That's right. I had to borrow money because of your demand for alimony. Just because I cheated on you for a little while? I don't think the alimony is worth $3,200,000.
Don't you know? The marriage is long and the relationship is bad. And if all of the mental damage is too great to infidelity, alimony could be that much. My ex-husband was shocked to hear that. Then I heard someone's voice behind him.
It's a loan shark. I'll hang up the phone.
He quickly hung up on me, so I blocked his number. Later, my ex-husband called my daughter. He said he was lonely and wanted me to take care of him. He was so persistent that I blocked the calls. That's what my daughter told me. I'm sorry for bothering you. I apologized to her and she said, It's not your fault, it's all his fault. She smiles at me. He didn't get along with you, Mom, and Grandpa. He didn't come home as often as he should have. I don't even consider him my father, so don't worry about it. My daughter encouraged me by saying so. My ex-husband got blocked by me and my daughter. He blurted out to everyone that he was lonely. One day, I went to inspect the car. The dealer who was involved with purchasing my ex-husband's new car said that my ex-husband, that he had a small rental apartment, that it feels bigger without my family. My ex-husband, now retired, can't seem to find a new job, and his debts seem to be increasing. He moved out of the apartment he was renting. He can't pay his cell phone bill, and his cell phone bill is out of service. He has been living in his car with the little money he has left, and he's in huge debt. He is also on the run from loan sharks. We have no way of knowing where he is now. Then we got some good news. My daughter is getting married to a man she met at nursing school where she did our internship. Of course, we didn't send an invitation to my ex-husband. He is missing and my daughter doesn't want him to attend. The day before my wedding, my ex-husband called her from a payphone. Before she could say no, he was forced to hang up due to lack of money. As for me, I'm living with my daughter and her husband while continuing to work as a nurse at a nursing home. The family home that my late parents left to me was vacant for a long time. They renovated it and turned it into a beautiful two-family house. My son-in-law is a really nice person. He takes good care of me as well as my daughter. He suggested that we live in a two-family house because he thought my daughter would be worried if I lived alone. When I went shopping with my daughter and son-in-law, he casually asked to carry my things. But it could just be because my son-in-law is in high spirits. After all, he's a newlywed. I made the mistake of believing in my husband's kindness when he was married to me. That's why, in order to prevent my daughter and son-in-law from repeating the mistakes I made, I wanted to have a relationship in which each of them can live freely and comfortably. Mom, this is the one I chose with him. Thank you for everything you've done. I hope you can enjoy your life from now on. With that said, the gift my daughter gave me before the wedding was a bright orange hat.